Literally.
But you say now that the system is against it. When you talk about
now let's get to the system.
Yes, through the
I was
system.
talking about way of life.
Right.
Now, as far as the system in America was never built for black people. And this is my personal opinion. I'm speaking for myself. I don't believe it was never built for black people because that system has never been changed. Those documents has never been altered. These things were made back in the umpteen hundreds. And these are the same exact literature that's down today. So mind you, at the time it was made, black people was never in a position where they were, looked at as equal. So if it's the same documents that they're applying today in 2014, it wasn't meant for them because I've been in a position where I've experienced Africa and I've experienced the United States. I always felt like Africa was for Africans. So when I see African Americans in America dealing with all these issues, my first question is, why don't they just go back home?
Where?
Back to Africa. Well, they'll be treated fair. Well, they'll actually be praised for who they are because of the fact that they're American. They'll get way better treatment. They can invest their money back home.
But come on, Akon, how do you tell people who've lived for generations, centuries and centuries in one land to move back to a place they don't know? I mean,
no, but that's my point. They
right.
don't know. It starts with a visit. How many African Americans do you know actually consider Africa as a vacation spot? Not one. When you look at the overall population of African Americans, a very few percentage would decide to go to Africa for vacation. Would even, just for knowledge, just to know where they come from, just to get an idea of what that is. It's so much fear installed into them that they wouldn't even want to even go there to visit. You mentioned Africa, they start shaking.
Akon, you've said, if I could have my way, Africa would be the United States of Africa with just one leader. Of course, Marcus Garvey wrote a poem about this. Bob Marley sung about this. Muammar Gaddafi, the Libyan leader, poured his wealth into this idea of a United States of Africa. But really, is it, when you look at Africa today, a continent of over 1 billion people, over 2,000 different languages, is it realistic?
Well, first of all, I think it has to be our generation and the generation that come after us to achieve it. I don't think this generation would ever be able to achieve it because there's too much history and it's too much built up into where it started today. It has to be set from a generation that's clear from the history, clear from conflict, and see the world in the way that we see it. The only way Africa can evolve in that way is that we have to be united. There has to be a united Africa. It has to be one Africa. It can't be so many countries with so many leaders, so many opinions. All those countries, I think, should be broken down into basically states. And there should be one president, and he or she should be democratically elected by all Africans to do what's best for Africa.
But I mean, in just one country already, it's so difficult to have a democratic election. How do you have a democratic election in a so-called United States of Africa? How do you do that?
It's not hard. I mean, listen, if China can do it, and they don't even have a democratic election.
So maybe what? So maybe what? Democracy is something that Africa doesn't need.
Africa,
maybe it has to be another form of rule.
There has to be elections. If you want to keep Africa stable, there has to be elections. All we need is Africans to be able to govern themselves. What's stopping Africa from governing themselves now and creating that one Africa is that there's still foreigners in certain areas that still control Africa. Prime example,
the former colonial powers.
Francophone countries. If the French just get out the way, we can really be okay. But a lot of the wars is set up from influences.